Keberangkatan tiba Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Sri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan diiringi dif-dif kehormat. Para hadirin dimohon berdiri. Hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Sri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah Al-Maghfurlah. Ampun tuanku beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik mohon diampun. Patik bagi pihak Akademi Kepimpinan Pendidikan Tinggi dan Universiti Malaya menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku bercemar duli berangkat ke Majlis Royal Address dengan tema Shaping University Leadership for the 21st Century Higher Education pada pagi ini. Sesungguhnya, keberangkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku menyerikan lagi majlis ini dan amat bermakna buat patik sekalian. Semoga Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala sentiasa memberikan kekuatan dan kesejahteraan kepada Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk terus memayungi universiti tercinta ini. Menjunjung kasih tuanku. Ampun tuanku, bagi memohon keberkatan dan hadirin dirahmati, majlis dengan sukacitanya mempersilakan Dr. Muhammad Syahid Muhammad Noh dari Jabatan Syariah dan Ekonomi, Akademi Pengajian Islam bagi memimpin bacaan doa. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma ya mujibas sa'ilin. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami yang maha pemurah lagi maha penyayang, kami sekalian hamba-Mu yang berhimpun di dewan yang mulia pada hari ini sempena program Royal Address Shaping University Leadership for 21st Century Higher Education. Memohon rahmat dan hidayah-Mu, semoga diberikan cahaya petunjuk kepada hati kami. Kau kokohkan perpaduan antara kami, Kau Kau berkatilah usaha kami dalam membangunkan kepimpinan ke arah yang lebih cemerlang, gemilang dan terbilang. Allahumma ya Rahman, ya Rahim, jadikanlah kami golongan yang bijaksana, berwibawa dan berkemampuan untuk membantu melahirkan masyarakat yang bersatu padu serta saling bekerjasama dalam menjalankan amanah pekerjaan. Tingkatkanlah kami dengan kemahiran dan penguasaan dalam bidang pekerjaan yang kami cuburi untuk menghasilkan hasil yang berkualiti yang diterima di peringkat tempatan maupun antarabangsa. Allahumma ya Aziz, ya Ghaffar, wa ya Qahhar. Anugerahkanlah sifat kesungguhan dan ketekunan kepada kami, agar senantiasa dapat melaksanakan kerja dengan penuh tanggungjawab dengan amanah yang dipikul. Jadikanlah kami mampu berkhidmat dengan lebih baik, menghasilkan hasil yang cekap, efisien dan teratur. Ya Allah, kami dipikulkan dengan amanah yang berat. Kurniakanlah kepada kami keupayaan dan kemampuan untuk melaksanakannya. Kurniakanlah kepada kami kekuatan untuk merangka strategi bagi menghadapi cabaran semasa dan mencapai kecemerlangan yang kami impikan. Allahumma ya waliyas salam, memohon kepadamu ya Allah, peliharalah dan lindungilah raja kami, Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan Sultan Nazrin Mu'izzuddin Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Adnan Muhibbuddin Shah Al-Maghfurlah, dan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Raja Permaisuri Perak Darul Rizwan Tuanku Raja Zahra Salim. Lanjutkanlah usia baginda berdua dengan kebaikan, kesihatan, keimanan, dilimpahkan rahmat dan keberkatan. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahmah wa hayyi' lana min amrina rashada. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minna wa minkum.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Terima kasih Dr. Muhammad Syahid Muhammad Noh atas bacaan doa sebentar tadi. Ampun Tuanku, bagi meneruskan majlis, Patik dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya memohon limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk Patik turut mengalu-alukan dif-dif kenamaan yang lain serta mengacarakan majlis ini dalam bahasa Inggeris. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku, Deputy Minister of Higher Education Yang Berhormat Datuk Haji Muhammad Yusof Abdal, Pro-Chancellor Universiti Malaya yang amat berbahagia Tuh Puan Datuk Seri Hajah Dr. Aisyah Ong, Yang berbahagia Orang Kaya Bendahara Seri Maharaja Jeneral Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Zahidi bin Haji Zainuddin, Chairman Universiti Malaya Board of Directors yang berbahagia Tan Sri Zarinah Anwar, Deputy Secretary General Policy, Ministry of Higher Education, yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Haji Megat Sani Megat Ahmad Supian, Vice Chancellor Universiti Malaya, yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Hamdi Abdul Syukur, the Executive Director of Asia Europe Institute, yang berbahagia Profesor Ulung Datuk Dr. Raja Rasyah, Your Excellencies, the Presidents of Higher Education Institute, Global Alliances, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone who participating in this royal address from the live streaming in Facebook. Ampun Tuanku, to begin the ceremony, we would like to invite Professor Datuk Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Hamdi Abdul Syukur, Vice Chancellor Universiti Malaya, to seek His Royal Highness pleasure to deliver his welcome address. Yang berbahagia Datuk, please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan Sultan Nazrin Mu'izzuddin Shah Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhibbuddin Shah Al-Maghfurullah, Chancellor Universiti Malaya. Ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun sembah Patik, harap diampun. Patik dan sekalian hadirat, dengan penuh hormat dan takzimnya merafak sembah menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Tuanku, bercemar Duli berangkat bersempurna program Royal Address 2023 dengan tajuk Shaping University Leadership for the 21st Century Higher Education. Ampun Tuanku. Patik mendapat sembah memohon limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk Patik turut mengalu-alukan div-div kenamaan dan para hadirin serta menyembahkan ucapan alu-aluan Patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. Ampun Tuanku. Deputy Minister of Higher Education Yang Berhormat Datuk Haji Muhammad Yusof Abdal, Pro-Chancellors Universiti Malaya, Yang amat berbahagia Tuan Puan Datuk Seri Hajah Dr. Aisyah Ong, Yang berbahagia Orang Kaya Bendahara Seri Maharaja Jeneral Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Zahidi bin Haji Zainuddin, Chairman Universiti Malaya Board of Directors Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Zarinah Anwar, Deputy Secretary General Policy, Ministry of Higher Education Yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Haji Megat Sani Megat Ahmad Supian, the Executive Director of Asia Europe Institute Yang berbahagia Profesor Ulung Datuk Dr. Raja Rasya, Your Excellencies, the Presidents of Higher Education Institute, friends from the Global Alliances, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else who are now participating through the live stream in Facebook. The challenges of the pandemic and the precarious global geopolitical setting, which has created various ripple implications, provide a compelling need for the nation and all sectors to bolster our preemptive resilience and readiness. The Minister of Higher Education quite recently has shared his visions and hopes in elevating and transforming the higher education arena in our country, which has captured the critical and essential areas that will be dominant in the years ahead. Changing realities on the ground with the rise of technology-related persistent demographic changes and implications with shifting needs and demands, and an integral and significant shift in conventional research and teaching and learning methodologies, all demand an equal level of positive changes in our responses, especially in the higher education. His Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, His Royal Highness Tengku Chancellor is well known for his unyielding and unwavering passion and stands for his pursuit and adherence to values, ideals, and principles in bringing about meaningful and positive transformation. His Royal Highness has been espousing good governance, importance of futuristic leadership, and forward-looking visions with good values and principles at the core of the very equation. It redefines the moral cost and high value bar which has been set in paving the way forward to a new positive fundamental in the approaches and final outcome of the intended aspirations. Compassionate leadership with an integrated underpinning of strategic new drive and vision of bold changes are not only needed but remain the main parameters of the much needed resilience factor and capacity to withstand the impact of the fast changing realities. We should share with you that last week I had a very good lunch with His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, and the question posed to His Excellency was how Korea within 30 years has managed to transform the once relatively poor country or equivalent to Malaysia, but within 30 years has really shown a dramatic increase in capacity and capability. Interestingly, there are two answers given by His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. Number one is visionary leadership that has propelled the higher education primarily. And secondly is education. So these are the two main reasons based on the words of His Excellency Ban Ki-moon that has really become the impetus for Korea, South Korea particularly, in moving forward, becoming a respected nation and country. His Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, it is our profound hope that today we will gain an immense awakening and impactful lesson from the key messages to be delivered by His Royal Highness. For his extensive wisdom and foresight will be the path settler in our renewed vision and strategies for the future of higher education. The wise, strategic, insightful, and future-driven message in His Royal Highness address will also serve as the shining light and inspiration of hope in serving as the pertinent advice and guideline to all of us here in the university in our mission to propel our new global profile and to impact the humanity and civilizations. His Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, as a closure on behalf of the University of Malaya, I would like to extend my appreciation to all of you who have worked tirelessly in making today's event possible. In particular, I would like to express my gratitude to Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku for the foresight to his royal address entitled Shaping University Leadership for the 21st Century Higher Education. Ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik mohon diampun. Sekian saja sembah ucapan ringkas patik. Patik mohon ampun kiranya terdapat sebarang celah dan kekurangan sepanjang program ini berlangsung. Izinkan patik mengundur diri dengan mendoakan agar kebaikan dan keberkatan dianugerahkan Allah Subhanahu wa taala kepada Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Datuk. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are now honored to call upon Professor Ulung, Datuk Dr. Raja Rasyah, the Executive Director of Asia Europe Institute, to seek His Royal Highness' pleasure for the brief introduction of this royal address and to humbly invite His Royal Highness to deliver the royal address. Please welcome Yang Berbahagia Datuk.
Menghadap Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan, Sultan Nazrin Muhyiddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Sultan Azlan Muhyiddin Shah Al-Makfurlah. Ampun Tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik dimohon ampun. Patik merafak sembah memohon limpah perkenaan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku untuk patik meneruskan sembah ucapan patik dalam bahasa Inggeris. I take great pleasure and feel highly privileged to be given the honor to introduce His Royal Highness, Sultan of Perak, Darul Ridwan, Sultan Nazrin Muhyiddin Shah, Ibni Almarhum Azlan Muhyiddin Shah Al-Makfurlah, to deliver the royal address today. Let me start by stating that Universiti Malaya was given the opportunity to work with the Higher Education Leadership Academy, AKEPT, and the Ministry of Higher Education to organize the AKEPT Global Series, which comprises the Royal Address and 3 series of the University President Forum, where the highlight of the AKEPT Global Series is the Royal Address. The program of Royal Address will be the program Bitara Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi, where attendees comprise leaders and the top management from the Ministry of Higher Education. And today we are fortunate to have representatives from the embassies, Ministry of Higher Education, global alliances, and national and international universities who will join us physically and virtually. There are not a lot more here who are viewing this virtually. That shall be streaming on AKEPT and Universiti Malaya Facebook. Ampun Tuanku. As the Chancellor of Universiti Malaya, and given His Royal Highness's remarkable accomplishments as a scholar and academic, and of course, his colossal amounts of compassion that is shown to the people of Malaysia and everyone he meets. The forum aims to gain from His Royal Highness Sultan Perak Darul Ridwan's guidance, views, and reflections on how university leaders have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and how better should they tackle their multifaceted and unpredictable challenges in future. More importantly, we are here to hear His Royal Highness's vision in navigating the complex environment of higher education in the 21st century. Ampun Tuanku. Now, Patek would like to humbly invite Your Royal Highness to deliver the royal address. Ampun Tuanku.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be with you this morning, addressing university leaders from across the Asia Pacific, from the podium of Malaysia's oldest higher education establishment, the University of Malaya. As ever, I am delighted to return to this university and to watch it continue to thrive and prosper on the global stage, not least through the hosting of prestigious international forums such as this one. Allow me at the outset to extend my deepest and most heartfelt sympathies to the people of Turkey and Syria following the severe double earthquake that struck their countries earlier this week. At this time of suffering and grief, you are in all our thoughts and prayers. As Chancellor of this university, I feel both immensely proud of its many achievements to date and deeply invested in its continued success going forward. Now, this, of course, begs the question, what does success look like for universities in the 21st century? And even more importantly, what are the means by which that success can be achieved? The answer to the first question is perhaps more straightforward. To my mind, there are four key components of success for higher education institutions in the 21st century. First, a successful 21st century university must recruit and retain good students, preparing them for employment in the global marketplace. It must also nurture quality faculty who produce valuable research while being committed to great teaching. It must also have sound finances and a sustainable campus. And last but not least, it must create a vision that will inspire the loyalty and generosity of alumni for years to come. If only it were that simple. With mounting global financial pressures and the ever more apparent impacts of the climate crisis, the present landscape for higher education institutions is turbulent, challenging, and uncertain. Rapid technological change, a changing labor market, geopolitical shifts and tensions, populist backlashes against multiculturalism and globalization, the impact of the recent pandemic, and fears of future ones, all these and more make the role of universities not only much more difficult, but also much less clear. What should universities stand for in the 21st century? What values should they uphold and inculcate? What essential purpose in society should they fulfill? These are the key questions with which university leaders must grapple in order to chart a course for their institutions going forward. Given the current financial outlook and market volatility, it might seem logical that 21st century universities need to think and operate more like businesses. They must be forward-looking, agile, adaptable. They must think carefully about the value that their courses provide to students in the global marketplace. Indeed, we saw the importance of that flexibility during the pandemic when universities had to adapt at speed to a new world of online teaching. Many institutions are now capitalizing on the exciting opportunities presented by this new way of delivering higher education through low-cost online distance learning, which also serves to greatly expand access. Universities will need to continue to adapt and innovate in response to the new challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Higher education leaders with sound business sense will be vital to this. And yet, universities are not businesses. Their success, their value, cannot be measured purely in terms of profit, and their students are not simply customers. Universities are thought leaders, defenders, and discoverers of knowledge. To quote the famous 19th century British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, universities are places of light, liberty, and learning. I, for one, firmly believe that universities have a civic duty to use their talents and resources to support the public good. We saw this in practice when the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine was developed at speed by Oxford University scientists. And the university insisted that billions of doses should be distributed at cost to over 150 countries in the developing world. Such decisions cannot be made on the basis of market forces and financial reckoning alone. They require moral and academic leadership. Research shows that the most successful universities across the globe are indeed those whose leaders are committed to academic values and to achieving the 4 success metrics I outlined above. Sometimes, these leaders remain active professors themselves. Always, they have a passion for the disciplines of both the sciences and the humanities. This is, I think, a point worth reiterating the sciences, and the humanities. A true university must nurture not only the crucial STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but also the humanities. The knowledge that comes from history, philosophy, religious studies, anthropology, languages, literature, and the creative arts. The leaders I have most admired at the universities where I studied have always embodied these values, passionately advocating for pure as well as applied study and for the pursuit of wisdom in all its forms. At a time when technical training is more and more sought after, while the humanities are defunded and deprioritized in education systems throughout the world, advocacy for them by university leaders is more critical than ever. You might ask, of course, why does all this matter? Isn't the priority of universities in the 21st century to equip their students for the world of tomorrow? And isn't digital literacy that should be of paramount importance for young people entering work in the age of the fourth industrial revolution? Isn't it scientists, mathematicians, and engineers that we need to solve the health, infrastructure, and environmental challenges facing our planet today? To which the answer is, yes, of course we do. But we need philosophers, historians, and writers as well. This point was made persuasively by the newly appointed Vice-Chancellor of the University of Oxford, Professor Irene Tracy, in her recent inaugural address. Tracy is a distinguished professor of neuroscience, but she spoke in her address of her awe of people trained in the humanities. And she criticized the great divide that has emerged between the sciences and the humanities, arguing that today's young people need a thorough grounding in both in order to navigate the challenges of the future. She also observed that while the next generation certainly does need to understand maths, science, technology, and engineering, it also needs to understand itself. In preparing the minds of the next generation for the challenges ahead, we must ensure that all students, regardless of subject specialism, are digitally and technologically competent. At the same time, we must ensure that all students have the opportunity to develop their creativity as well as a strong sense of ethics and values. As Islam's most famous theologian, Imam al-Ghazali memorably said, and I quote, "Knowledge without action is insane, while action without knowledge is in vain," unquote. In other words, we must make sure that today's students have both the skills to take practical actions and the wisdom to direct those actions to productive and worthwhile ends. To make advances in artificial intelligence and genetic engineering, for example, we need scientists and engineers. But to be able to consider properly the risks and the ramifications of such developments, as well as the gains, we also need philosophers and theologians with expertise in ethics and moral hazard. We need historians who can tell of occasions in the past when apparent progress has had catastrophic, unintended, and unexpected consequences. And we need creative individuals who can dream of hitherto unimagined new solutions to our various problems. In addressing climate change, we need not only technological solutions, but also changes in human behavior. Literature and the arts can teach our students the true value of the beauty of the vanishing natural world, which in turn will foster their desire to be good stewards of the earth, the oceans, and the air above us. For Muslims, this is the applied study of the theological concept of Khalifa, humankind's true vice-regency and responsibility for our planet. And in negotiating the perils of conflict and rivalry, whether ethnic, national, or international, we need not only lawyers and political scientists, but also theologians, anthropologists, linguists, and historians who have been trained to understand the customs, beliefs, and value systems of different cultures and faiths. So another important function of our universities is to equip the best young people to be able to speak to their peers across the globe. This vital ability to communicate, and even more importantly, to understand, is another skill fostered by the humanities. Over many years of public speaking, I have returned again and again to the image of building bridges. Usually, these have been bridges between different countries or communities, or else between conflicting viewpoints. In relation to the role of the 21st century university, I would like to use that image of the bridge in a slightly different context. To my mind, part of the role of the university is to build a bridge between the past and the future, between wisdom and progress. The 19th century biologist Thomas Huxley described medieval universities as being storehouses of old knowledge, while Victorian universities were factories of new knowledge. I think in the 21st century, universities need to be both of these. And it is that skill of looking to our past in order to shape and improve our future that the humanities so brilliantly nurture. In looking to the future of the university in the 21st century then, it seems only fitting that we learn from what some great thinkers have said about the value of the university in the past. Allow me, therefore, to offer you some words of wisdom from a pair of 19th century alumni of my own universities. Cardinal John Henry Newman studied and then taught at Oxford. In his great book, the idea of a university, he wrote that the object and mission of the university was not mechanical production. In other words, the practical training of students. Indeed, he argued that the university's function is intellectual culture. It educates the intellect to reason well in all matters, to reach out towards truth, and to grasp it. This noble thought reminds me of a conversation I had with a former provost of my Oxford College, Sir Jonathan Bate, in which he spoke of his visits to distinguished college alumni. He told me that whether they were captains of industry, wizards of finance, or Supreme Court justices, they would say again and again that what they sought when recruiting university students was emphatically not expertise in management and marketing theory or knowledge of mergers and acquisitions. Everything specific to their professions could be taught, indeed, was best taught on the job through experience after graduation. Instead, what they wanted from the students they recruited were what we might call the soft skills: open and inquiring minds, articulate voices, clear reasoning and good writing, human and social skills, the ability to think on one's feet, to balance opposing points of view, to come to a decision, and then to act upon it. What they wanted, in other words, was an intellect that could, as Newman said, reason well in all matters, reach out towards truth, and grasp it. How striking that at least in one university leader's recent experience, the purpose of the modern university aligns so closely with Cardinal Newman's statement on the subject almost 200 years ago. Reflecting upon Cardinal Newman's vision of what a university should be, higher education leaders today might wonder whether our universities have become high-end vocational or trade schools. Essentially, factories supplying graduates to meet the needs of modern economies. This question is especially relevant for us here in Asia, I believe, particularly for our policymakers in higher education. Are the roles of universities in the developing world seen as different from those in the developed world? And should they be? Would the study of literature, for example, be regarded by some as a luxury? All universities, of course, and especially those in the developing world, need to equip their students with relevant and marketable skills. But what we must recognize is that the core skills fostered by the humanities, communication, decision-making, the ability to synthesize huge amounts of information, are of enormous value in real-world contexts. After completing my studies at Oxford, I continued my education at Harvard. While my research interests were by then very focused, I was always conscious that this great university was built on the strong foundation of the liberal arts undergraduate degree in which Harvard had led the world for generations. It was in 1837 that Ralph Waldo Emerson, then a recent graduate of the Harvard Divinity School, delivered an address entitled The American Scholar. In the address, Emerson laid out what he saw as the three functions of the true scholar. Functions which I believe should still be at the forefront of the mind of every university leader today. Emerson began by asking the question, what does scholarship teach us to know and to see? His answer was that the role of the university was to create the thinking man. I should add that at Harvard in the 19th century, it was only man, whereas now it is man and woman. We have at least made some progress in the last 2 centuries. Now, for Emerson, there were 3 key qualities that shape the thinking person. As he put it, and I quote, "The first in time and the first in importance of the influences upon the mind is that of nature. Every day the sun, and after sunset night and her stars. Ever the winds blow, ever the grass grows. Every day, men and women conversing, beholding, and beholden. The scholar must stand wistful and admiring before this great spectacle. He must settle its value in his mind," unquote. For us today, and not just in relation to universities, but throughout the world, there is no more important and pressing question than that of nature, of the future of the planet. Ever the winds blow, ever the grass grows, said Emerson. But the way in which the winds now blow and the grass now grows, in the age that geologists have come to call the Anthropocene, have been shaped by humankind and its toxic emissions in a way that Emerson could never have imagined. Our most urgent need is thus to settle the value of our planet in our own minds and in the minds of the next generation of thinkers. Emerson continued his meditation on the formation of the true scholar by saying, and I quote, "The next great influence into the spirit of the scholar is the mind of the past, in whatever form, whether of literature, of art, of institutions, that mind is inscribed. Books are the best type of the influence of the past, and perhaps we shall get at the truth by considering their value alone," unquote. The insights to be gained from the mind of the past are now available to us in many forms. As well as books, we now have television, film, Netflix, and above all, the internet. And our sense of that mind is far more diverse than it was for Emerson. We have learned to listen to the wisdom of the East and of indigenous peoples, as well as that of the Western tradition in which Emerson was nurtured. But what we sometimes forget is that the internet and social media content are not moderated by scholars, publishers, editors, critics, and peer reviewers in the manner of traditional book learning. For this reason, a crucial function of the 21st century university is to train and guide students to be better able to distinguish the mind from the mindlessness, the historic truths from the fake news, and the beautiful from the ugly. And this is important, especially in our fractured public realm, because university leaders have a duty to speak to this public realm. Which brings us to Emerson's third and final point. And I quote, "There goes in the world a notion that the scholar should be a recluse, as unfit for any handiwork or public labor as a penknife for an axe. The so-called practical men sneer at speculative men, as if because they speculate, they could do nothing. Action is with the scholar subordinate, but it is essential," unquote. In other words, education, according to Emerson, is a preparation for action. Just as Imam al-Ghazali preached many centuries ago. This is a point in which I hope has been present throughout my speech, but I am keen to re-emphasize it. From the importance of higher education institutions being adaptable and innovative, to the value of the humanities, a common thread has been how universities can engage with and give back to society. They do this by training students to be able to make valuable contributions. They do it by generating research that benefits humanity. And universities also give back to society through their leaders. Leaders who will speak out and stand up for what they believe and who argue for it rationally and articulately. As I look out across the room today, I feel confident that I am addressing a generation of university leaders who will speak out and stand up for truth in a time of great uncertainty. This certainly is something the world is much in need of at present. Now, I am conscious as I reflect on the various thinkers and truth tellers I've quoted during my speech, that almost all of them, from Benjamin Disraeli to Thomas Huxley to Cardinal Newman and Ralph Waldo Emerson, hail from the 19th century. In articulating the role of the 21st century university, I have turned very specifically to the wisdom of the 1800s. And while this was not exactly deliberate, I do not believe it is any coincidence either. The 19th century was, after all, a period of progress, innovation, rapid change, and globalization. In that sense, it has many parallels with our current era, with all the excitement and all the uncertainty that rapid change is bringing in the 21st century. For just as the 19th century witnessed seismic shifts in employment and production due to mechanization during the first industrial revolution, we too are experiencing similar shifts due to AI and digitization in the fourth industrial revolution. As we stand on the brink of this rapidly evolving future, it is reassuring to know that others have stood there before. In the 19th century, great thinkers looked to the universities to shape and guide the progress of the era in the right direction towards a brighter future. In the here and now of the 21st century, I believe the world must look to you to do the same. Thank you.
Ampun tuanku, disembah maklumkan bahawa demikianlah sempurnanya program Royal Address pada pagi ini. Patik merafak sembah menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih di atas limpah perkenan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku bercemar duli berangkat ke majlis ini. Ampun tuanku, beribu-ribu ampun, sembah patik mohon diampun. Mengumumkan keberangkatan Duli Yang Maha Mulia Paduka Seri Sultan Perak Darul Rizwan diiringi div-div kehormat.